All right, hello, welcome to another Out of the Basement Pat's Chats, and today I am chatting with Shane Hensley from Pinnacle Games. How are you doing, Shane?
Doing great. How are you?
Not too bad. You've been in the industry for quite a while, a decade or two, I understand.
Couple.
And that, Pinnacle Games, give me the background. Like I've been, as you can see, enjoying Pinnacle Games for quite a while. I even have a lot of the Savage Worlds, the Rifts, the Deadlands, and even the Flash Gordon, which hasn't gotten to the new version yet, but I have that as well. So
It
what
was
what
kind of a half step, actually. It was the bridge between what we would call Savage Worlds Deluxe
okay.
and the Adventure Edition.
Yeah.
We had a
So
lot of concepts we added to that got explored in Flash. Yeah.
yeah, so I know the original Pinnacle Games it used a different concept in the Savage Worlds. So what got started? What got you started with Pinnacle Games? Like how did you and Matt and all those people get together and say, "Hey, we want to do a game and we want to have our company."
So it began before Matt Forbeck and Greg Gorden got involved, way back with John Hopler's Last Crusade and my own Fields of Honor, which were Fields of Honor was historical miniatures rules. I'm a old school grognard, and John Hopler created an amazing World War II card game we published called The Last Crusade. And I called it Pinnacle Entertainment Group because I wanted each of my friends to be able to own their own properties and publish within this entity we would create.
Okay.
This was back in 1994, so we're almost 30 years old. Yeah! Next year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you
So
planning anything special for that? Sorry.
I don't know yet. I just started thinking about, hey, it's been 30 years since Fields of Honor came out, so we'll have to think about that. But then, a few years later on in 92, I started freelancing for other game companies. And, by 94, when we published our own, I had quite a few contacts, and I worked for TSR and Dark Sun and Ravenloft and a bunch of stuff like that. I worked for West End Games on Torg and Shatterzone and Star Wars. Worked for FASA and White Wolf and a whole bunch of other companies as a freelancer, and I did amazingly well there, thanks to help from other established freelancers at the time, like Bill Slavicsek, sorry, Bill, Nigel Findley, and some others who were very candid with me about what I should expect and what I should do. But anyway, by 96, that's when I had the idea. Really, 95 probably for Deadlands.
Mm-hmm.
Was going to do it on my own and realized, with all this big network I had, how much more advantageous it would be if I had help from people who had even larger networks, not just to make sure that it sold, but also to make sure that it was done correctly and could build on any success that it might have. Not that I really expected to have any, but we did get lucky, caught lightning in a bottle. And me, Matt Forbeck, and Greg Gorden sat down, wrote those original rules. Greg had to bow out for personal reasons, but Matt and I carried on for a few more years before Matt went his own way. And here we are almost 30 years later.
That's impressive. So what brought about the change from the original Deadlands? Because you went into the revised edition and then the reloaded edition and then into the Savage Worlds.
Right. So Reloaded and the current edition are pretty much the same, right? They both use the Savage Worlds rules. We updated a few things, but mostly they're the same. So the original game, it was the era of second edition AD&D, and I love D&D and I love lots of it. But of course, like everybody, we were tinkering with our own ideas, and here's how we wanted things to work. And D&D didn't translate the idea of the outlaw Josie Wells so well, right? And what we wanted was when the gunslinger fires, each bullet you track, and it has this chunky thud when it hits the zombie's body, and we really wanted that to translate. How do you do that? From a cinematic experience to a die experience,
Yes.
a dice experience. Well, what we came up with is what we call Deadlands Classic, and along the way, we married the idea of poker into those mechanics.
Yes.
Right, and people really took to it because it really fit the theme.
Mm-hmm.
We got to have the roll a handful of dice experience, feel each one hit, do something significant to the target that you're hitting. The problem was, and we also wanted to use all our dice because, like everyone, we had
D4s, a D6s, a D. Oh yes, yeah.
Dang it, I want to roll 5d12, right? So you could do that. But the problem we had, so narratively, Deadlands led to something called Deadlands Hell on Earth, which is the post-apocalyptic version where the bad guys win. right?
Yes.
And that was a cool thing. We hid clues that was going to happen in the original book, who the big bad guys were, all this really fun stuff. And by the time we got to Hell on Earth, we were doing APCs with automatic grenade launchers, full auto machine guns, lasers, spells, all this crazy stuff, right? And that was just too much for the system, the Deadlands Classic system, to handle. Now, the truth is, I could handle it pretty quickly, and so could most of our experienced GMs.
Yeah.
But, getting new people to get into such a complicated, I'll call it a, first or maybe second generation system, was pretty tough. So by the time we wanted to do a miniatures game, which we called Great Rail Wars, we simplified that down to a single die roll plus just a single die roll at the time for, all these characters. So you could have huge loads of miniatures on the table doing their thing. And, you could have a great game of Great Rail Wars with 50 miniatures and vehicles and ornithopters and steam tanks and all this crazy stuff, and play that in about 2 hours, which was just awesome. And as the D20 boom and bust came and RPGs changed their nature a bit, we did a D20 version of Deadlands, and it sold very well.
I remember that
one.
But
our core fans decided that we had abandoned our system to do D20. Now, we hadn't. We were dual statting. I had a guy walk up to me at Gen Con and say, "I'm not following you anymore because you abandoned your system." I said, "Look, it's dual statted. It's right here." But
it actually had the conversion I remember that it had the conversions.
It had both sets of stats, right?
Yeah.
Which, it might be too heavy, but it was there. So anyway, things weren't going so well. The D20 boom and bust came. Game stores weren't ordering, and we, on a whim, I decided to try our Great Rail War system as an RPG. And it kind of took off from there, and that's what led to Savage Worlds.
Okay, cool. Considering you've redone a lot of the stuff from from the older sort of classic stuff into the new Savage Worlds, will there be a new Hell on Earth coming out?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
So we already did Hell on Earth for Savage Worlds once, Hell on Earth Reloaded, right? Yeah. And it's still great. It has a beautiful cover by one of our good friends that I used to work with at Cryptic Studios. But it definitely needs an update. Plus, we don't really think of just updating the rules. We think of updating the story. Where does the story go?
Oh, yes.
So with one retcon, everything we've done since 1876 in Deadlands is still the same story. We've never rebooted back to an earlier year or anything like that. It's still the same one. Yeah. We're in 1884 now, and just creeping slowly so that by the time I die, hopefully we're not in the 1800s.
No, I do remember how you did that, because in the first one, the Civil War is still going on, and then there was the different adventures and stuff to defeat the Reckoners. And then in the Savage Worlds, I was reading, it's like, oh, they did defeat them, but the Reckoners found a way to sort of.
Yeah, so in total honesty, there are two reasons we did this retcon in Deadlands, the Adventure Edition, which we just call Deadlands the Weird West now.
It is weird, yes.
What it is. So when I started Deadlands, and I'll just take this one on myself, I wanted the Confederacy to exist to create conflict and confrontation, right? Mm-hmm. That was not to make any political statement. It was I want this conflict in the game, because that's how the big bad guys like the Reckoners are going to stir things up. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the world changed quite a bit between 1996 and 2016, I think, is when we did that version of Deadlands. And a lot of people were upset that the Confederacy still existed. They saw that as the Confederacy winning and an advocation of the Confederacy's principles, which was never the case. So we had two things that one thing people didn't know about and one thing they did. We had something called Deadlands Dark Ages in the works. I had been alluding to it from the very beginning with a character called the Cackler. Mm-hmm. And spoiler alert, if you haven't read this yet, the Cackler is Mordred.
Yes.
Okay, he's Morgan Le Fay's son. And that is revealed in the graphic novel, The Cackler. We had intended that to be an animated series. Oh, that would have been awesome. Spawn was big at the time on HBO. Yeah. We thought, we're just going to go in there and get this made. Didn't happen.
No. That's too bad, because that would have been a great series.
Yeah, well, never say never. Mm-hmm. We got lots of stuff in the works. Who knows what will ever happen? But so anyway, we finally did reveal that secret in a cackler. The whole Morgan Le Fay angle and Deadlands Dark Ages is now starting to materialize, and we'll see that next year with Deadlands Dark Ages. So Morgan Le Fay, same thing to us, exist in a couple of different timelines. Okay, and then there's a cool, really awesome story reason you'll see for that.
Nice.
But we decided to go ahead and use that that event that we knew was upcoming to go ahead and get rid of the Confederacy a little bit earlier than we had planned to. And that made a lot of people happy, made a lot of people upset. But at the end of the day, it was my decision. That's what I wanted to do. And we did it. And for me, I think, an outsider would just say, well, you retconned it to give in to the critics. Well, that's fair to some degree.
Yeah.
And, and some of those critics had great points. But to us, it is also a story thing to show the magnitude of this thing that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's
so
not just
both things are true.
Yeah, it's a larger scale than you first thought when you first
right. Yeah, and with the Morgana effect, which is what we call it, like the butterfly effect, right? Mm-hmm. We were able to fix a few other things that have happened over the last 27 years now that weren't exactly like we wanted them to be. And they're pretty minor, right? Again, for the most part, our continuity is a straight line. I'm really proud of that.
Oh, it is.
J.J. Abrams lost.
Yeah, no, I like the fact that also with Stone, like there was this things like, well, Stone went to the future and then came back, and it's like that's a tie into Hell on Earth. And,
that's right. Yeah, we're not afraid to deal with the time travel stuff when it fits a really good narrative purpose. Mm-hmm. Right, and we've done that a few times.
No, I do like it. I said one of my campaigns, I ran the first edition, well, the second edition, quite a long time. I had an NPC there that started off as a character in another campaign. You always do this, right? You take it, I like this character. He's going to be an NPC. I ran him through to actually defeating the Reckoners in my own sort of way. Cool. And then when Savage Worlds came out, that's the Weird West, I was like, oh, I can use this. So what happened was that, the change happened. So this one character sort of came back into the new world going, but we won. What? I got to go find new people to help out, but we won. What's going on? And so that was a whole tie into a new group of PCs of a party to say, okay, well, we got to figure stuff out.
I don't know if you remember, but we outlined it in Hell on Earth that the good guys won there too the first time, right? So the Reckoners cheat. But it takes so much energy and energy to do that. They can't do it again.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can win out this time, it'll count. But the first time, they got to do over.
They got to try it. Speaking of just going back to the Great Rail Wars, because that was a fun one. Are you going to come up with a new edition and bring it out again for Gen Con and stuff like that for people to play miniatures?
It's funny how often we are asked about Great Rail Wars, especially this year for some reason. It's something I'd love to do. It requires a different kind of company, though. Yeah. We're all virtual right now. There are 7 full-time employees, 7 or 8 part-time, and then dozens of contract authors and artists that we work with. But to do a miniatures game, I have a pretty strong feeling that you need to have a group in-house, right? Yeah. Because you need to do constant releases. You need to be play testing it constantly. It's more of a Games Workshop model than a RPG model to some degree. Yeah. And I don't know if that's in the cards or not. It might be that we would license it to somebody else if we thought they could do a great job. I would love to do it, but the practicalities are pretty tough.
Yeah, you're right, especially the virtual thing. Because yes, role-playing games, you can play test virtually, right? You're testing the system out virtually, doesn't matter. But for miniatures, you need to physically be in the same space to do it with the people to see how it plays out and stuff.
I mean, we have played some stuff. Like there's a Mythic board game for Deadlands that we have bought and we're going to launch next year. And we have played that on tabletop, whatever
simulator,
it's called.
Tabletop simulator. Yes.
Simulator. Yeah, we've played that there. That works really well. But I am a face-to-face guy, and for that kind of thing, I want to sit around the table with my friends. We play every Wednesday here at my house.
Oh, nice. Yes.
And for the last 4 months, I've run our new Deadlands campaign that's coming out next year. called Night of the Wendigo. I ran 2
Ooh.
groups simultaneously, which I haven't done since college.
It takes a lot out of you. You're like, this sounds great, and you're like, oh wait, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, you know, and it's not just hey, let's see what happens this week, right? Like you might do with your standard campaign. It's I have to publish this. I have to get all these ideas right. You didn't get what I was going for, so I didn't explain it very well. So I've got to rewrite this whole thing. I changed my bad guy. I mean, that was
well, it's like it's either too powerful or not powerful enough, or
right,
or they figure the clues out too easily, and you're like, oh, I got to make that harder to.
Right, or they jump to the wrong conclusions and they really convince themselves of it, and you're like, okay, is this just because this group of players did that, or did I set up the mystery poorly?
Yes.
Right, and it was the latter. So I had to fix it.
Yeah, but again, like I said, I understand. I love playing virtually. It's because it's during the COVID, it was the only way to play.
Yeah.
And so I have friends in England and Waterloo that I still play with.
Awesome.
But yeah, the playing in person is so much better for the rapport.
Yeah.
There is one in Ottawa called Can Games in Ottawa in March. If you ever happen to be in the area.
You know, I've never been to Canada.
No? Oh,
Nope.
no.
I've been all over the world, but I've never been to Canada.
Oh, you should come up sometime.
Well,
we're friendly. We'll buy you beers or whatever.
Right.
Yes. I don't know if you're a beer drinker or bourbon or what.
I am.
Yeah,
I'm a beer guy.
Beer guy.
So when I started in the industry, this is how I got work. Okay. I have a low tolerance for hard stuff. I'll get drunk pretty quickly and just, make an ass of myself. So I don't touch it. But I can drink beer all night. So when I was going to the TSR designer parties and the White Wolf parties and all that kind of stuff, at 2 a.m. in the morning when you're one of the last guys around, they're like, Shane, I like you, man. We should do some work together. Like, yeah.
That's networking. That's the old days of networking, right?
And then of course you have to deliver, right? I mean, you've got to make good on the work.
Yeah.
You get 1 or 2 chances where you don't, and then that's it.
Well, what's in the future for Pinnacle besides Savage Worlds? I know you're doing a lot of work with that. Is there any plans for anything else in?
Yeah. So we have. We were going to launch it this year, but we just didn't feel the time was right, especially the way the economy is right now. But we have a board game that builds off of our Necessary Evil franchise called Doomguard. Doomguard is the elevator pitch is Supers versus Cthulhu. Okay, but it's not just Cthulhu. We have invasions from hell, alien Holocaust, all this cool stuff, robot Holocaust.
Oh wow!
The heroes and villains have to get together and defeat these incursions, and that's a big board game. It's it's the whole deal, right? It's cards and miniatures and boards, and there are these cool locations that once they become corrupted or destroyed, flip over and have different effects. It's really awesome. Mike Barbeau designed it along with Simon Lucas. Super excited about it. We just couldn't get enough of our prototypes ready. We're worried about some of the shipping issues that we're having these days.
Yes,
especially around the holidays. So we're probably going to launch that in January.
Oh, nice, cool.
We've put out a few teasers for it so far, but yeah, we're super excited about that.
Looking forward to that.
If we're successful with that, I guess whether we are or not, because I've paid for it and we want to do it. A friend of ours named Babis created this Deadlands board game that Mythic was going to publish. Mythic has had their own trials recently, so we bought it from them and we're going to publish it. But it is also a huge game and a big investment for us. But it is amazing. It's such a fantastic game. That's the one that I played on Tabletop Simulator.
Nice. Will you be put into? Because I know you did with the Savage Worlds. You had the your combination with Rifts now, right? And that must have been a big thing. Because Palladium's been around again for a long time as well.
Yeah.
And Rifts is their big one, right? So what was it like to be able to to sit down with the I don't know if Kevin's still involved or not, but to sit down with them and sort of, okay, let's do Savage Worlds Rifts.
It was a blast, because one of the things as the Savage Worlds rules designer, one of the things I'm proud of is how flexible it is, and we get away with that even though we have such a limited scale, D4 to D12 plus. Right, because of our setting rules primarily and our edges and hindrances. That's where the secret sauce of the game comes together. And doing something like Rifts was a real test of what a system can handle, right? Because you've got to have like a Mars agent be able to walk beside a glitter boy and be challenged. That's a big deal.
It is.
Right, and I think we pulled it off. Sean Fannin and Ross Watson were the ones who went and got that deal from Kevin and talked him into it. And Kevin was gracious enough to let us play in his sandbox. These days, Sean Robertson runs the line along with a group of freelancers and play testers that he works with. So we have a lot of people who are 30-year fans of Rifts who work in it and are professional designers, thank goodness, because it is a challenge to balance all that. And I say the word balance with a little.
I played the original Rifts. I know what you mean for balance, because as much as I loved, like, I've always loved Palladium for their lore. Like, they put a lot of work into their world building and everything. However, the system didn't work for balance. Like you said, like, I'm a vagabond and this guy's a dragon hatchling. Like, okay.
Yeah, and balance is a deep subject, right? We could do hours and hours just on balance, but I will quickly sum up my view on it. If you make a combat character and I make a face character, we are not going to be balanced in the same situation.
No.
Right? I'm going to be good at the social stuff. You're going to be good at the combat stuff. But players inevitably talk about combat, right? Well, they're not balanced for combat. Well, you didn't make a combat character.
Yes.
So I don't know what to tell you.
No. I agree with you on that one.
Through the campaign.
Yeah, I've made in different games face characters, and I've solved issues by either bribes or stuff to not have a combat.
That's right.
And because in my mind, that's my character goal. I don't want combat because I'm not good at it, so I'll do everything I can to avoid it. And I figure that's good role playing. Like, if you make a face character, you should be trying not to do combat. You might get stuck in it. Yes, that happens.
Right.
But there should be.
Yeah, and it's an RPG, right? It's subjective. It's not a board game where we all have to be good at the only things the board game accommodates. We have to be, as a party, hopefully good at all the things a campaign can do. And one of the things that we do to try to bridge some of that is a lot of the combat heavy characters have a few social things like menacing, right? That makes you more intimidating, that might help you through a social situation, but only in a particular way.
Yes.
Right? Or the face characters have a lot of abilities to support and test the enemies to help their combat buddies set up the bad guys.
Yeah, like the taunting and other sort of things where it's like, okay, it's not really, it's not going to help you personally in a situation, perhaps, but the rest of the team, if you can taunt the other guys and all that, get them off balance, it helps them all out.
Right. And of course, you can play with all of that, right? You can make a Grey Mouser type who's good at taunting and stabbing people in the eye. You may not have the strength of Fafford, but you have the speed and agility, and you make up for it in other ways, right?
So that's one thing I always like. Yeah, but I always like with the Deadlands, the Pinnacle one is it's open. Like, you're not stuck with like the old. I understand, I've played them as well, but the class concept where it's like, I'm a wizard, so these are my strengths, and that's it. If I can make a gunfighter who's also a priest, or this as well. And that's why I've always liked the Savage World for that, is like, with your edges and hindrances, you can mix and match however you want to do.
Exactly.
To make it much more individualistic to your
sort of play.
What
you were talking about, the challenge of designing for Rifts, and I think what's super cool when we got to Pathfinder, classes are an inherent part of the world there. It's not just the rules.
No, it's
right. Yeah. They are heavily integrated into how the world works. So we wanted to have classes without having classes. I wanted my cake and eat it too. And that's exactly what we talked about when we started designing it. And I think we accomplished that with the class edges, right? So you can still make a tank mage if you want to. You will have to take certain class edges that will start funneling you into other abilities. And it can become less optimal to do so depending on, what you want to do. And if you want to optimize into pure fighter or pure thief or multi-class, in the Pathfinder vein, then you can do so.
Yes.
And I was, thrilled that the team was able to pull that off too.
It works well, and also now I know they've come out with a couple of the Terror on the I can't remember the name of it, but Terror on the Night or whatever, the sort of for Rifts. Yeah,
Terror on the Dark Frontier.
So I've been backing them as long as I can there, because like I said, I've really enjoyed the system, so I get all the stuff I can. Just change notes here a bit though, because yes, you've done the Fantasy Companion and all that, and Rifts, but you also gone into the supers. Pinnacle now has the supers as well.
Well, we've had supers for a long time.
Yes,
2004. Necessary Evil was Clint Black's creation. Saw the concept for that and knew we had to have it, and we did. We did our first attempt at the super system there, and then there was a revision for it, and then we did the Superpowers Companion back in 2008 or so, and then the new one for the Adventure Edition just came out last year before, yeah.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
And that's been a blast because I've written it. This was the fourth time essentially, right? And it's pretty similar to the beginning, but just so much cleaned up and works better and smoother, and just thrilled with it.
No, I said it's been very interesting to see the development as you go along for the different editions. Looking back, what's your sort of your opus that you say, okay, that one book or that game system or that's the one you're the most proud of, that you go like you tell your grandkids that.
Well, I mean, that's like asking which of your kids is your favorite, right?
They're all your favorite. All. Yeah.
Certainly Deadlands has been the thing that has hit the biggest and stuck the longest. It stuck the landing, so to speak. And we had no idea. When Matt and I first published it, our orders were pretty awful. And then we thought, funny story. So we did our initial orders, and a lot of our distributor friends took X amount because they were friends, right? And we came back in, we had a little office at the time, and we came back in the office, and I looked at the printer, and there were no orders the next week. And I was like, okay, well, we've sold that through. It's okay. We knew it wasn't going to be a big thing. And I don't remember, we had a meeting or we did something, and I came back in and I realized that it was an old thermal printer. This is 96, right?
Yeah.
And I realized that it was out of paper. So I said, oh, well, it's out of paper. So I put paper in, and then the orders just poured in.
Oh, nice.
And
yeah.
we sold out of the initial print run within a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And that's when we knew, okay, we've got something special.
You hit it right in the mark. Yeah. Somehow.
That was right. I mean, there's a lot about timing and how we wrote the game. It was very fun to read. Savage Worlds is not as fun to read because it is serving a different purpose, right? Deadlands, the original classic version, is more fun to read, but the system's a lot thicker to get into.
It is.
Yeah. But that set off, we had books coming out every month for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
All the different source books and splat books for the different character types, and those were a blast. But man, was that a treadmill to be on. That's really tough to do a book a month.
That is, especially since, like you said, you're having to make sure it works with the rules, the settings right. Will people like this, and that, and then the editing and then the editing as well, because it's one thing to write it all, and you're like, that's great, and the editors are like, what are you doing? Like,
and get the art and do the layout, get all the files ready for the printer, and back in those days we were FedExing hard drives.
Oh my goodness!
To get them the files, right?
Yes,
it's so easy these days.
Yeah, I know. I guess they're still in my heart, the old system, because they had not just the dice, the cards, but the poker chips and everything. So I'd pull out beer, whiskey, just to have that flavor. And it's like the chips are flying back and forth, and that's the idea. It's like same thing with the bennies, though. You're supposed to give them out for people for the role playing, for what they're doing. Right. They make you laugh. Here, have a Benny.
That's right.
Because you're gonna spend it. So, that's what's.
Yeah, Benny Flow could be a whole other topic of conversation, right? and they're just like the old Fate chips from Deadlands. So it's, we think it still has all that flavor. We still use cards for initiative because it's very visible, changes every turn. It lets you do special effects like you got a Joker, which, I can't tell you how many times my parties have been, like right on the verge of death. That Joker comes out, they get a Benny. Yeah, that's a big surge. Yeah. They go, right?
Oh no, yeah, and the Benny flow I think is helpful. The one issue, like I said, that's probably one thing you notice as well with the old system is the chips were great, but they're also the experience. So people would have to do this. Okay, do I spend the Benny, the chip to do this, but then I'm not getting all the full experience, and I know that affected my players a few times because they're like, I don't want to spend it because that's my experience.
Yeah, and honestly, I kind of miss that. I liked it. A lot of people didn't. I do like now that the party just all advances together. In our plot point campaigns, especially the most recent ones, we actually tell you when to do an advance so we can really kind of stage things for a really smooth story. So there's a lot of advantages to it. But I did like that idea of, at the end of the adventure, I got a stack of 10 bennies. What do I care? Right? So I do kind of miss that aspect of it, but
Yeah. Well, I like the one, like I said, because you had if you gave the red ship, the marshal got the draw, and that
right,
was the one of like always people are like, ooh, but it's I can reduce wounds. Actually, sorry, except for wounds, it didn't count for that. But if they're using
right,
it,
right, right,
but it's
right.
still like, oh, I want to do well, but I don't want to give
And
him.
we have in Savage Worlds, we have a setting rule called Hard Choices that does the same thing. Every
Oh,
time the
really? Oh, I
players
missed.
spend a penny, yeah,
Oh,
it's pretty
okay.
cool.
That, and again, it makes it does sort of even it out, right? Because it's like, yes, you're getting an advantage, but the bad guys, it's
That's right.
it's karma or fate or whatever you want to call it. The universe needs a balance.
Yeah,
No, I believe you've written novels too, haven't you?
I have. I've written 3 novels and a whole bunch of short stories.
Nice. And that, I think I have any of those because I've been starting to buy the Deadlands books, the novels again. I know you've written some short stories for those.
So the first novel I wrote was called Soul Survivor. That was for Shatterzone for West End Games.
Oh, I remember that Shutter Zone. Yes.
Yeah, and very proud of that one. I wrote 20,000 words in a day one time on that particular novel of 100,000 words. That
Jeez.
went really fast. I was really into it. Scott Palter gave me that opportunity. Uh, the late great Scott Palter. The next one I did was called Blood of Tarion, which was also for West End Games for their Blood Shadows game. And that one, I chuckle every time I think about it. It's got a meat-eating horse, and the main character is a gal named Buck Granger, whose father really wanted a boy, and she holds that against him. Had a lot of fun with that one. And then my third novel was called Darkfall, which was for the world of Aiden that a computer game company called SSI published.
Okay.
SSI kind of gave me my start in computer games, and the guy who ran it at the time is a guy named Chuck Kroegel, who was the original SSI founder. He did all the gold box games.
Oh,
People
yeah.
my age may remember. Just a great guy. He still runs Petroglyph in Vegas, and I was fortunate enough to get to work for him directly for a couple of years. But yeah, I got to create the whole world of Aiden and do it for a huge computer game team, and then write the novel and oversee the other 2 novels that were done. It was a blast. Really enjoyed that process.
Are you thinking of another novel? I know you're busy a lot with all the Pinnacle stuff and everything. And
So I do have a novel in the works. It's completely independent. I wrote a series of novelettes called Kringle Down not too long ago. They're on Amazon.
okay.
They're just personal pet projects. They're really rated R, which I don't tend to write, but this story, that's what it demanded. I wrote a screenplay for it that's
Oh,
out there. We'll see what happens. The novel I have in the works is a fantasy novel, which is not my normal thing, but I had this experience in one of our games, and I thought, man, this would make a cool novel. So I've got some words on paper.
my.
A lot of people in our industry are people who really just want to write novels, but this pays the bills in the meantime. I'm
Mhm.
doing what I love to do. I love making RPGs. I love creating settings, scenarios, and worlds for people like you to see what you do with them.
Oh,
That
nice. Yeah.
that scratches my itch. So while I love to do novels, I don't aspire to be a full-time novelist.
So you like the whole interaction sort of with the players of like,
I
here's a
do.
world, give me the feedback, we make
I
it better
do.
together.
Yeah. And I love to see the creativity that comes out of other groups and what they do with it. And when I hear people's, 10-year Deadlands campaign and all the stuff that happened in it, nothing makes me happier.
Oh, I don't think I've run quite 10 years because of COVID stopped things, but I did have one campaign based on the Pendragon system. I ran for 25
Cool.
years in real
Wow.
time.
That's great.
And I've got notes for, decades of stuff. And it's like, I'm going, I'd love to put it together, but I'm like, can I just hire a student to put all these together for me so I have a nice, I'll have a beautiful binder of it all,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, we have kind of a different model these days. I don't know that I would want to play the same campaign for many years.
Mhm.
Um, what we do, and it's how we publish as well, we want people to play Deadlands for like 3 to 4 months, play a campaign, right? And then switch over and play some Lost Colony or ETU or something else, because I think all of us have a little, for lack of a better term, attention ADD these days. I guess
Yeah.
that's redundant. We
Yeah.
have a little ADD these days, right? There's compared to when you and I were kids, there are so many amazing properties to
Mhm.
engage with, whether it's movies, books, video games. even within each one of those, there's 1,000 awesome things to game and play. I
Yes.
still play other RPGs when something new comes out. I'll try it. I played Aliens for Free League not too long ago. That was a blast.
Yes.
I love to play other people's games and learn from them. And maybe occasionally say they could have done this better, like we do.
Yes.
But I love playing different things, and it is so cool to be able to do, like, we play tested Daryl Hayhurst's The Maw campaign for Lost Colony
Yeah.
earlier this year. We play tested his Necessary Evil 3 last year, actually 2 years ago. And being able to switch like that, but still use the same system, so we don't have to relearn everything, but with new setting rules, so it really feels different. Is it's exactly what we wanted, and it's what we're doing. So
Well, I again, for like I said, I like the Rifts because Rifts has
or
sort of
risk,
get that, because you've got the Western feel for the southern Texas areas. You've
yeah,
got the Atlanteans. You've got vampires. You have dwarves and stuff. So you get all sorts of flavors from around.
right,
And I like that sort as well. It's like, okay, and then you can also bring in, like you said, like Flash Gordon or other ones for there's,
yeah,
because it's Rifts. You could have space travel and stuff as well,
that's
and you
right.
can have superheroes. I just find there's not enough time in a week to do all this stuff because
Well, yeah, that's why I think you have to have a weekly. It's set in stone, right? Every
mhm,
Wednesday night we play,
yes,
because if you try to ad hoc it, it just doesn't work. People
yeah.
are too busy,
Well,
right?
it's funny, back in the day when we were students, and we were like, oh, play it and whatever, call up your buddies, hey, you want to come over and play? Yeah, sure. Nowadays it's like, okay, so what are you doing in 3 weeks on this day?
Yeah, that just doesn't work.
We game regularly on Sunday, but we're like with same thing. We like to try different games. Like there's Viking
Yeah,
games we like, there's fantasy games. So we're like, okay, so we've got it set for, it's once a month, but it's always like this game and then that game and that game. So
cool.
attention deficit is there where it's like, oh, can we do now this? It's like, okay, during COVID, the virtual systems like our Roll20 and Foundry helped the game system so much, right? They were a godsend for players and GMs to be able to do. I find though sometimes if you're not doing the narrative play, like the theater of the mind, it's a lot of work for those games. Do you feel the same way, or do you like it more with the virtual ones?
Yeah,
Or
so virtual stuff. It depends on the set that you have, right? So if I'm going to run Deadlands, the Foundry and Roll20 assets that we have for that give me so much stuff, right? But if I'm going to do something original, like I ran a weird whaling campaign during COVID, and finding stuff for that was a challenge. But yeah, I guess it really just depends on how well supported the VTT set that you need is. I mean, if I'm going to do D&D Pathfinder kind of stuff, there's no end
oh no, there's stuff there.
to the resources you can pull. For something like our own ETU, again, we provide a lot of assets, but if you've got a pretty out there original idea, you might struggle to find some resources.
Yeah, I found the same way because yeah, for Deadlands, Rifts, there's a lot. For a lot of the fantasy games as well, because of D&D and Pathfinder, fantasy stuff is easy to find. There's so much
Yeah,
out there. But believe it or not, we were running for a while. We're playing Matt's Brave New World.
yeah,
That's sort of hard to find some things because it's like there's a lot of superhero stuff, but they're very obvious. Like that's either DC or Marvel, and you're like, well, we don't want those characters.
yeah,
Again, I still prefer in person because I'm also one of those guys that you give me a day, or it's like, hey, Patrick, can you run this to now? Yes, I'll be able to pull, as I say, pull stuff out of my hat and run it. Whereas Roll20, I'm
right,
like, oh man, I want to get pictures, I want to have maps and all that. Whereas in person, I'm willing to just, this is what it looks like. Go.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's hard to. So I draw on a battle map a lot, because I don't always know where they're going to go or
Mhm.
what they're going to do, and you could do that in Foundry Roll20. But I don't know, it's not quite the same. It feels like it should look better on a computer screen
Mhm.
than my scribbles on a tabletop.
Yes.
There's a psychological thing going on there, right? But that's why we do invest in those data sets, for Foundry and Roll20 particularly. And we have do-it-yourself assets for a lot of our products as well. So if you're using some other platform, you can do it. Oh, Fantasy Grounds does a
Fantasy
great
Grounds.
job
Yeah.
of translating all of our
Oh, really?
materials. So, yeah,
Oh, okay.
very heavily invested in us. Great partners, actually. They do all the work. Fantastic.
Oh, that's actually easier for you too. You're like,
Yeah, I think Fantasy Grounds is a steeper learning curve for most people, but once you get it, it automates so much. It's pretty nice. I've played it a few times like that, and it was great. Now they're all great. I hate to sound like I'm just trying to make everybody happy, but they each have different advantages. Roll20 is very quick to do on the fly.
yes, yeah.
Foundry's the prettiest and fanciest. Fantasy Grounds has everything and automates everything.
Just learning curves and how much you want to be involved.
Right.
Because I said Roll20's got the different levels. If you want to get full into like programming, there's a lot there for that. And one of the people I talked to recently was David Gallagher. He has a Marvel one where he's done incredible work in Roll20 because he's programmed it because he knows how to do programming.
Cool.
And I'm like, that's great, but it's like for me to do that, I wouldn't be able to do that. Whereas, Foundry has built in like other people have done the work where you can just go, oh, I want to use this feature. Thank you. Just add it to mine.
Exactly.
And that is a nice option. Also, one thing I found because I started the campaign, I don't know, a few years ago. But now with Roll20, they've done a whole bunch of newer stuff, and I'm like, oh, but I want to change the way it's designed because there's better stuff now available. And I'm like, that's a lot of work. How big a group do you like to run? Like if you're
Well, it really
not for
depends on what
playtesting.
I'm running.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so like for a long campaign, 5 or 6 is good. I don't mind running. I've run tables of 20 before, but it's more like a miniatures game at that point, right? I've got a town and you've got a guy and there's something going on and you're getting eliminated and it's more like a tournament event kind of thing. But I can handle that pretty well. I multitask pretty well, but definitely for a campaign, 5 or 6 is good.
Holler, I have it. I haven't actually chanced to play it. I've sort of used a little bit into my Deadlands campaign again. That was another interesting one where Tim was saying, how he got contact with you and you're like, hey, I want to, and then you ended up running it for him.
Yeah, so he wasn't able to make our Savage Cruise that we did in 2020.
Yeah.
So I ran it for him and pretty much killed the entire party with a bear in the first big encounter. Yeah, it was. Holler's just one of those unique properties. Now and then we'll see something like Necessary Evil or Holler that I'll say, we want that. Let's bring that in, and it serves a couple of purposes. One, Holler is just brilliant all on its own, right? I mean, Tim's just an incredibly creative and intelligent guy, very thoughtful guy, and everything in there resonates with something from his experience. So there's deeper meaning to it, and I just think it's brilliant. Second, we also like to show what all the system can do, right? Fantasy, supers, rifts, all the way down to, and I can say this because I am one, a hillbilly with an old musket that barely works half the time, right? And Holler, it's beautiful. The artwork that we got from Francesco is incredible. We have a graphic novel already made for it that we will put out at some point when we get the next supplement ready. So nice. That one moves a little slower, but we love it. We're behind it.
Oh, good. And now I know for a while there's been talk back and forth for either a TV series or a movie for Deadlands and stuff like that. Do you actually see that possibly happening? Because now there's been a lot of computer game movies and the Marvel, the heroes are pretty much in my mind, reached their peak. So I think it's time for something new. Are you like, hey, we should try to get something?
Well, I mean, we said, hey, we should try from day one back in '96.
Yeah.
Right. And we've been this close a number of times. I think it was 2013, 14, 15, somewhere in there. We actually announced the series we were doing with Sony that Microsoft was going to put on their new streaming channel. And then it must have been 2008. Windows 8 came out. And Microsoft crashed and burned, and they said we're killing everything except our core businesses, Office, Word, Office, and Windows. And even then, they kept 3 shows. One was Deadlands, one was Winter World, a comic series. I can't remember what the third was, and that lasted for about another month, and then it died. So we've had scripts written by well-known people. We've had option money quite a few times, where people have put quite a bit of money into it and held on to it for X number of years and
Yeah.
it didn't happen. So there's always stuff going on that we don't talk about, not because it's super secret. I mean, it is, but mostly because, if we said it 5 times over the last 20 years, people would never have any trust in you. But we were crazy close last year to a TV series and a big computer game for it, and then the company, it just didn't work out.
Oh, that's too
And
bad.
I'm the easy one. I'm not holding out for some crazy amount of money or
You
a
just want to see
role
it.
in the
You love to
project.
see it being done.
Exactly. I do want it to be good though.
Mhm.
That that is the one place that I put my foot down. I don't want a bad Deadlands movie where I make $1 bazillion.
No.
I would rather make a little bit of money and have a great Deadlands
Oh, I guess
movie.
Uli Bool is out then.
He's out.
Because yeah,
But
it is,
hopefully we'll announce something in the next year or so. We'll see what happens.
all
There's
right.
stuff in the works. There's always stuff in the works,
Oh, that's good.
and
I was
there's
gonna
stuff
say
in the works for all our properties.
oh, good. I was gonna say a little too bad. Bruce Campbell's a little older now. He couldn't do the Ronan Lynch
We
anymore.
really wanted him back in the Briscoe County days, but he didn't want
Yes.
to do it because he was doing Briscoe County. But there were people in Sam Raimi's office that were putting Deadlands in front of him, saying, "Let's do this." And one of them wrote a script, and we talked about it for a bit. This was probably would have been like 2001 or two or something. And then he went off and did something else, and
Mhm.
that's what happens to us a lot. In fact, we had a deal with Amazon. I'm sorry, we had that deal with Sony, and then when that fell through with Microsoft, Sony still wanted to do it, but then they decided they had to choose between Black Flag and Deadlands. They said we can only do one
Oh,
period one, and they did Black Flag because it already was written and had cast and everything
had
else.
done it. Yeah.
But
Oh,
they
it's
held on to it for a while. It came back around maybe 2018 or so, and Sony wanted to do it, and the gal who was a big champion of it wound up moving over to Amazon, and when she left, that was our champion, so that was gone, and then she wasn't able to get it over to Amazon. So
yeah.
that kind of thing happens a lot.
It
You get
does.
right up to the bat, and you think, oh my God, we're finally going to get it. But here's an important lesson maybe for all the people who do what I do. Uh, Things are better these days in our industry, mostly because of Kickstarter
Mhm.
and just the larger game industry in general. But when we started out, things were tough for a long time. We didn't make much money personally, and we were struggling. Even in the best of years, money was still pretty lean. And we thought, well, if we can get a movie or a TV show or something, we'll be set.
Mhm.
And that was true. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. So eventually, I guess wised up and said, you know what? The core business is what needs to matter. Let's make sure that that's working. And I went and worked in computer games for quite a few years to help Pinnacle pay off all its previous debts, get me and my family a little better situated. And
Mhm.
then when all that happened, I was able to come back and do it full time again. It's a long story, right? That I'm summing
Well,
up here. But these days, a TV show or a movie would be nice, but we don't have to have them.
see, that's
We're
good.
doing just fine.
Oh,
But I
I know a
want
lot.
them. Absolutely want them.
Mhm. But it's because everyone's like, oh, the Game of Thrones or stuff like that. I was like, well, that's that super. You have a better chance of winning the lotto almost than something like that, because getting a deal with a movie or TV, there's like as you've seen, there's so many different layers, and it's so easy just to. I'm going to use a story here, which is actual true. So, do you know the Babylon 5 TV series?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a movie, and there are plans to do several other series and books and stuff like that. The person at Warner Brothers changed, and the new person hated Babylon 5. So for the next 20 plus years, he made sure anything that was Babylon 5 was killed. No TV deals, no books, no nothing. Only last year did the change happen, and the new person's like, yeah, let's start doing Babylon 5 again. So there's a new animated movie. There's talks about books and all that. But again, it just shows you if one person's like, no, I don't care. I don't like
That's right.
understand this Deadlands.
Did you read Straczynski's book, Becoming
No,
Superman?
no, I haven't read that one.
You
That's
should.
okay.
It tells that whole story, and I think I got the title right. I listen to it on Audible when I run, but he's an amazing guy. While he went through the abuse he suffered as a kid,
Yeah.
what he was able to do with that. I was very fortunate this year. He was at Phoenix Fan Fusion, which used to be our Phoenix Comic Con, and I just happened to catch him when he was all alone. So I just walked up and told him, how much his book and his story meant to me. And I actually have not watched Babylon 5.
Okay.
It just wasn't my thing back in the day, but I admire him greatly.
Yeah, but I guess I understand where you're coming from for like Deadlands or Rifts or what, or Necessary Evil is if you don't get the right person in charge who's like willing to go with the back the project, you're like, well,
that's right. There's so many moving parts. I mean, look at Dwayne Johnson in Black Adam, right? It took him 15 years to get that role, and then when it came out, it bombed because of all the other stuff that was going on.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's no better or worse movie in my mind than all the other superhero movies, and I love superhero movies. To me, even the worst ones, honestly, I'll get something good out of them.
Yes.
But to me, my childhood was Marvel and DC Comics and a little bit of some other stuff, and being able to see these things come on the big screen and going to, Chili's for lunch and seeing a 60-year-old guy wearing an Iron Fist shirt, right? Not even Superman or Batman, right? Something a little more obscure. That's freaking awesome.
Well, you also like it nowadays because back in our day, when we were gamer geeks, people were like, "You'd play what? You do what?" It's like, right? Yeah, I game. Like, what? Do you dress
now
up?
Football players do it, and people wear T-shirts in public, and streamers make tons of money, and it's a whole new world, and that's a great thing.
Oh, I feel great because now it was like, it's like now that all the different cons and everything are out there. It's great, and I mean, yes, there's still you might get some of the weird crazies out there, but that happens no matter where you go.
That's right.
But overall, when we're going for any Warhammer 40K thing or Comic-Con, I've always had good time with any of the people. Because politics never comes into it. It's the game. That's what you're there for. And I feel that's improved so much over the last decade or more. Again, I think we start aging ourselves and we're looking back how far we go back for.
Yeah.
Like I said, the Can Game one has been around for over 40 years. The one in Carleton University, and I remember going to those back when they were starting. But again, it's lasted 40 years. Yes, there's been some drier parts here and there for same as other games, and I was going to say that's also I know for game companies, it's the one of you always have to try you're selling stuff, but you only sell so much of the same thing because after everyone who wants it owns it.
It's saturated, yeah.
And then so you have to try, okay, we need something new or change. So is there any plan for like Savage Worlds to have change its version again, like a new updated change?
Honestly, we just did a reprint because we keep running out of stock on the core book. So we just did a huge reprint. It's going to land actually today. I don't really anticipate doing a new edition. The one that we just did cleaned up there's like a page of changes that we've made. It's like a power got more expensive by one PowerPoint. It depends on how many printings back you go, I guess. But if we do another version, Jody swears she won't let me do it, but I'm going to call it Savage Worlds Omega because it will be the last version. Yeah, but it's not on the schedule. Nobody's talking about it.
Well, you still got you. Pinnacle's got a lot of stuff.
We're really happy with what we've got, and even if we did do another edition, I can't imagine it'd be much different.
No. And again, like I said, because you've got all the older edition ones that you can't easily bring on to the newer ones.
It's crazy, right? I mean, the very first book we made, Evernight, everything in there works as is with two exceptions. We don't have charisma anymore. And damage for weapons is strength plus a die rather than strength plus a number. Which is super easy because you just look up the weapon. Yeah. So that's pretty cool, right?
Oh, it is. And that's so easy to convert.
25 years. Yeah.
That's impressive. There was other things that my brain, threw me off here. This is a great time. So you're is there any con or convention you're going to in the next few months?
Yes. So Gamehole Con in Madison, Wisconsin is the weekend of October 20th. I'm not sure the exact dates. I'll be there Wednesday through Sunday. running games, doing panels. Quite a bit of our staff will be there.
Nice.
We're making a pretty big presence out of it since we didn't go to Gen Con this year. So if you're anywhere in the in that area,
I wish. I'll try to. See, my dream thing is if I ever win the lotto, I'd love to go around, Canada and the United States and hit all the different gaming conventions as they go along.
Be great.
Interview people, run games, be involved in games.
Well, I mean, there are professional GMs
There
these
are.
days, right? I don't know if you can make enough money to make a living at it, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it's nice extra cash. I've been looking at what's it called, Start Playing or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, where you pay to play, and there are some games that none of my group has any interest in or have that I would like to try to see some other ideas. I'd like to try City of Mist. I'm not a big Powered by the Apocalypse guy. I think it limits your choices rather than giving you choices, but different strokes and all. But I would love to try it with City of Mist. I played it in other games. I mean, again, I like trying different stuff and seeing how it works. The problem I've had with Powered by the Apocalypse is it just seems like it limits. But oddly, a lot of the narrative games, if you look, you can't see, but on my shelf, are many of them, right? I buy them, support them. I like to see them do well. But a lot of the narrative games that I buy wind up having like 100 and some pages to tell me how I can speak and tell a story, which to me is the opposite of how it should be. So a game that they denigrate games like ours. Sometimes people denigrate games like ours, like Savage Worlds or D&D, and call them traditional or trad games. But to me, I would rather ask you what you want to do. You can do anything in the world. You roll some dice, you get a number, and we're going to look at that and go, well, on a scale of 1 to 8, that's either horrible or awesome, right? To me, that's as narrative as giving you 3 choices. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to bash anybody else's stuff.
No, I've always been the thing is as I'm playing or when I'm running, I always let give them enough rope to hang themselves, as they say, right? It's like, you want to do that? I'm not going to stop you. I'll, change things to go along. But if you want to try that, here's a number. Try it.
Yeah, and of course, it's also how creative you are with it, right? So when I say 3 choices, that's a very shorthand way of trying to explain a complex concept. But I have found, with most groups, the very creative people are hogging all the action. And you can say that with any game, but it is especially true in narrative games because that's all there is.
Yes.
Right? The guy who just likes to play quietly and roll his dice and min-max.
He's not getting anything out of it.
Yeah, he's not getting as much. Somebody like, my wife loves to play RPGs. She's been playing them with me since we've been together in high school.
Oh, right? My goodness.
So wow, she is a quiet player.
Yeah.
And sometimes the circumstances and the dice need to help her, need to speak for her. She is creative. She's just not as comfortable taking the limelight from the rest of the group that you kind of need to do periodically with narrative games. So again, it's a whole other discussion, and I don't mean to yuck somebody's yum because I play them and enjoy them.
Yeah, I was gonna say it depends on the player, because some players don't do well when they're put on the spot to be, creative or narrative. It's like, they're like, I don't know. Right? And it's nothing against them. It's just, different people, different personalities and stuff. And some people don't do well in that sort of, and again, there's games I wouldn't run or Powered by Apocalypse for certain people, because I know in that situation, it's not their style. It doesn't, and I don't want to make them feel bad that, they can't come up with an answer right away. It's like, well, not everyone can, right? So I don't want to play a game where they feel, put out or uncomfortable with, right?
I think the opposite's also true, right? I mean, I've played in a lot of convention games for narrative style games, particularly Powered by the Apocalypse games, where I had to really rein myself in and not do stuff because I didn't want to take too much spotlight from others. So, again, I don't want to get a whole bunch of hate email about
no.
bashing on.
Well, again, it's
hard because I think it is brilliant in so many ways. I just think it requires a little different type of group or environment that I don't tend to have much of.
Yes. Well, I guess, and like I said, for some players, it's great because yes, they can interact amongst themselves, and this is where, like I said, same as you, I love all of these different games, the different types of systems that suit your group or your players, and it's just more of trying to find them for that.
Right.
But then
Or
again,
adapting a rule system to your style, right? Like
mhm,
my son ran us through Tomb of Annihilation when 5e was newer, and so we could all try it out and loved it. We all loved it, and he ran it a lot like I run my games, pretty loosey goosey
mhm,
until it really mattered, right? Then we got down into the nitty gritty of the rules and got tactical, and it was awesome. Had a fantastic time playing it. I mean, Mike did a great job, Mike and the team, I should say, with
nice.
5e, and that's one of the reasons it's been so successful,
Mhm.
and it deserves it.
As a GM, you have to be willing to be flexible. Like that's the biggest one for I find
Right.
any game master for any system is be flexible. You know,
Yep.
there's
Absolutely.
times to follow the rules, and there's times to just be more. We'll make it up.
Yeah. That's right. And
So
that's where
yes.
I get in trouble when we talk about things like this, because I'm a player, game master, and game designer as well, right? And I'm not. I guess sometimes I haven't really had anybody tell me this, but I suppose it could be. Well, you just want to sell Savage World, so you're pushing people down that tunnel. But that's not really me. I want to talk games, and I want to talk game design and why I like something and why I don't. And it's the why I don't that gets me in trouble, right? Because it hurts somebody's feelings or makes somebody feel bad because I have a little bit of a platform,
Mhm.
to get that opinion out there. But I just like talking about games and game design.
No,
And even the things I don't like, it's often but tell me why you do. Help
do.
me see what's cool about
Mhm.
it.
Well, thank you very much, Shane. Is there anything you would want to say to any aspiring GM, player, writer, or anything? Any pearls of wisdom?
Yeah, I've been having this conversation with one of my sons lately. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there, right? There are so many opportunities for people to create stuff these days and share your creativity with the world. In back in our day, it was a lot harder, right? You had to write a query to a publisher by snail mail
Mhm.
and hope that they replied, and then go through the whole process of trying to do a little bit of work and then more work, yada yada. That was really tough. But these days, there's the internet. There is your own site. There is Drive Through RPG. There are the guild systems on Drive Through RPG where companies like ours and Paizo actually give you templates and art that you can use to create your works. Right?
Mhm.
There are artists who will happily join with you to create your new world. There's AI art. You might want to do for I can't make any money at this yet, but I want to show you my vision for the world. Whole other discussion, I get it, but as a world creator, those are the cheats you may want,
Mhm.
at least to even show the team of artists you want to hire. Here's what I want the world to look like. So you have so many options to just make stuff, get it out there, get feedback, take that feedback, right? Learn learn your grammar so that when you want to break it, you can and you know why you're doing it, right? It's fine to do. You just got to know what you're doing, because bad grammar, or poorly proofed work will distract your reader and take them away from the beauty of what you want to show them. But get it out there, get the feedback, be creative. This is the best time in human history for you ever to do that. And if you're not taking advantage of it, then you're probably throwing up those barriers for yourself, because there are none.
Well, thank you very much for that, Shane. And thank you very much for watching another Pat's Chats. And if there's any questions, make sure all the links for Shane's, well, as many of the links I can find for Shane will be in there. And join us again next time.
Hello, thank you for watching the video. There's a bunch more on our site. Please check them out and give a like and subscribe if you can, and really appreciate that. Out of the Basement will be live streaming again the Canadian Tabletop Championships May 24 to 26 in 2024 in Ottawa from the Rito Carlton Club. Out of the Basement will also be live streaming a special event. A video will be coming out about that, where we will be having dice that have been made for us by Baron of Dice. If you wonder who Baron of Dice is, check out
Bye.